Hello, hello. Welcome back. Thank you to all of those who have subscribed and watched my entire journey. I appreciate it. And if you haven't, do subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and watch the whole journey. It's quite an adventure. But for those who have watched it from the beginning, I wanted to do a quick sort of overview of what gear I ended up with on my journey. It took a little bit to get this video going because we stayed after we finished the hike. We stayed in Atlanta with a good friend of mine for about a week, just kind of catching up, recovering, and then we drove back to Canada. The original plan was to go down to Florida, but that didn't end up happening because they had some really bad weather down there, and it just made more sense to come back to Canada because we had some things to get done. So we came back to Canada. And sadly, we came back into snow, which I'm not thrilled about, but it's Canada and it's winter. Aside from that, I'm back and I want to go over what gear served me well and what I actually ended up carrying the whole 2,198.4 miles. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, starting off is my Z-Packs bag. I have unpacked some of the stuff just because it needed to be washed and cleaned and I just couldn't let it get stanky. So my gear's kind of a little everywhere. But I did have, now this is not the bag I started with. As you may know, if you have watched my videos, I had a gear failure in the whites. So Z-Packs had to send me a replacement bag. It was the same model, I guess. It was the Ultra Dyneema bag, their newer one, which is supposed to be a bit thicker and stronger. But it had a malfunction in the very back here. One of the stays had popped through, so that had to be sent back to be replaced or fixed. They couldn't fix it, so they sent me a whole new bag. So this bag is slightly different than the one I started with. It has a different type of mesh for the front pocket, which I actually like. There's no Velcro on the lip, which I also like because the Velcro was kind of annoying. Short of that, though, it's pretty much the same bag. I had my own pockets that I had bought. So this is the Z-Pack phone pocket. I do highly recommend this pocket. Oh look, I still have trash in there. It was great. It held my phone. I have an iPhone 13, so it was big enough for that. Plus, I kept my bug net in there, or my gloves, or clearly my snack garbage. This I picked up at Shaw's as a water bottle because I'd started off with a homemade water bottle straw thing. Did not work at all. So I bought this. I'm not sure what company it comes from. I don't recommend it anyway. I know Chicken Tramper makes one that is a little more adjustable. It was really tight to fit water bottles, so I had to get really small water bottles, which meant my drinking capacity always had to be refilled quite often. So not my favorite piece of gear, but definitely need a drink holder up at my chest there. And I also had these two pockets, which I picked up from Z-Packs. Again, they were great pockets in their size. What I didn't love about them is, I don't know if you can see that, they wore out. On this side here, it just completely snapped right off, so it's just hanging on by this elastic, which slid around a bit, so wasn't a big fan of that. But in the pockets, I still have with me my Body Glide. Very important for the summer months. As you know, monkey butt, or swamp ass as some people called it, is a real thing. This was an important piece of gear, as was my sunblock, because I did get sunburnt a few times, but especially in the summer months or when you're up in the Alpine, and then at the end when there were no leaves. So this was important. I carried a pen, which I didn't start with, but I ended up putting in my bag because if you want to sign the logbooks, there's a lot of times the pens don't work, or you have to sign the registrars and the pens don't work. So it's just kind of handy to have a pen on you. It didn't freeze I mean, it didn't get, there were a few days that got cold enough to freeze, but my pen didn't freeze. Some hand sanitizer, because there's a lot of dirty monkeys out there. I also carried my little Swiss Army knife. And this honestly was all I needed. Jeff did have a slightly larger one, which I would use, not because I needed it, but because it was just more handy. He had it on his outside pocket. I had to dig for mine. I always carried extra Benadryl. A lot of you know I had some issues with wasps, and I'm sensitive to them, so I ended up, this was in my first aid pack, but I also carried extra in here in case I needed very quick access to it, which I did and replaced often. So, as well in there, the trusty bug net. Do not leave home without your trusty bug net. It is the most important piece of gear that I used, certainly for the first half of the hike, because Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, not too bad. Massachusetts was really bad. I don't know why that skipped. I think it was because we got that extra dose of rain, and there were a lot of bugs. So this bug net saved my tushy. So that's in that pocket. This pocket was just my snack pocket, so that was just food. Always carried that. I did carry chapstick in there as well. I didn't really use it because I found that once my lips acclimatized to the wind and whatnot, if I used it, then they would get soft again, and then I would have issues again. So I found it better not to use it, if that makes sense. But then I ended up using it at the end, so as well, I carried on the outside my Kulu cloth. Loved this. Would definitely recommend for any woman out there. You need one of these. It saves on just having to go get toilet paper and bury toilet paper, and it's just a pain in the ass. I carried a hanky because there's 1,001 uses for a hanky. Mostly it was for my nose, because I always had a runny nose. I don't know what it is about walking out there, but you always have a runny nose. Not so great in the rain. So there you go. I carried on me, but I have at the table here right now my buff. This was, I mean, I enjoyed it particularly in the cooler months to keep my neck warm. I know a lot of people use their buffs for all sorts of other things. I didn't tie my hair back with it very often because I wore my ball hat. The reason I wore the ball hat mostly was for the sun, and if it was misty or rainy, I needed to protect my glasses so I could see, because there's no windshield wipers on these, and you'll notice these are different glasses because I have to go get my other glasses repaired from the big scratch I had when I fell. So there's that. So I did have my ball hat, which I don't actually have here. I must have put it away already. So that's what I carried on those sides. As well, in the front pocket, I carried my Katadyn Bee Free water filter. This did last the whole hike. It was getting pretty slow near the very end there, partly because the water that I did have to filter a lot of the times near the end of the season, like October, September, it's a lot drier, so the water sources are not as great. So sometimes they just resembled a puddle, really. And so it was pretty tough on this. It still works, but it's probably time to be replaced. I didn't pop the bag or anything. I know some people have some issues with that. This worked really great. Jeff had a platypus version, which is just, he filled up a bag and it would drain. And that was really good at the end of camp when you didn't want to have to sit there and squeeze out. This was really good on trail. So there's definitely a benefit to both. Neither of us used the Sawyer squeeze, but lots of people did. So, you know, that's whatever you got is what you got. This is my poop kit. And yes, pardon me, I did have to use it a lot more than I anticipated. This was the Vargo Dig trowel, and I'm really glad I had this one because, again, I don't know if I mentioned it in the beginning, it had serrated edges, so it was really good for cutting up the roots, because that seemed to be a lot of what the trail was, very rooty in the ground. So that was really handy because you end up digging a lot of those, especially again near the end of my trip, which would be a lot of some, you know, just the North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia. Y'all don't have privies out there. I don't understand it. There's no privies, or there's very few privies. So you end up digging a lot of poop holes. I also have my powdered soap to wash my hands. Very important because, again, some very dirty people. Oh, it even still has water. But this was by far the star of the poop kit. My bidet. I used it when urinating and defecating because you can clean everything off, and then when you're done, you can use the water and the soap to wash your hands. So it was the perfect little thing. Again, I got this off of Amazon. It was a pack of 3 for like $10. This is the smallest of the 3. This was a great purchase, and I highly recommend it over any of those ones you attach to bottles and whatnot, because they just seem so big. And a few other people said they'd gotten them and they weren't impressed. And then I showed them this and they were like, ooh, very interesting. So, highly recommend. Of course, as you see, there's little spritz of water. So it does leak a bit, so probably best not to leave water in it. I would just fill it up with my water bottle that I didn't put electrolytes or any drinks in, because, you know, you don't need electrolytes on your tush. Okay, so what else I would carry in the side pockets would be my smart water bottle, which I have thrown out because they were nasty. I started off with an Nalgene bottle, which I would have kept hiking with, but the Mahoosuc Notch ate it, along with my prescription sunglasses, which I'm still very sad about because I really liked those. But I would carry my water bottles out here, one on each side, and then I would carry this on one side and whatever else I needed to shove in the sides. I didn't actually use the side pockets to hold that much stuff. It was usually just a water bottle on each side. I would carry my small tripod, which actually let me go grab, because I totally forgot about that, because it's not what I'm using now. Okay, so this was the little tiny Joby tripod that I used. It was great because these are flexible and I could put them in trees and all sorts of fun stuff. So this would end up in the side pocket along with the water bottles. Okay, so moving on to what's inside the bag. This was my food bag. I don't even remember what kind it was now. It was the same one I started with. It worked really great. I did like, I threw a little carabiner on it just for the hooks here, because it snaps shut here, but it has this little clip that you can hang it from, so it's not putting the weight on the clip itself to snap it. This worked out great. I had my titanium long-handled spoon. Worked really great, especially for the mountain house meals and whatnot to dig into. No complaints there. I have my little 750 ml Tokes pot, which I bought one of these little elastic bands. It's a double elastic band, and it survived the whole trip. I'm actually quite shocked at that. I thought I'd break it for sure. I got this off Garage Grown Gear. It's a great website that has small cottage companies put their stuff up there, stuff you can't find in an REI and on a lot of gear stores. And for someone who lives in Canada, to have that shipped up here was great. So I carried my ghetto stove here. This is, again, something I got off Amazon. It was 20 Canadian bucks. I don't even know what it's called. It's a no-name one. It's got the little fire starter on it. It works really well. And I would carry a little bit of fuel still in there and a bandana underneath to clean my pot out and to keep the fuel canister from rusting inside. So that's what I would carry there. And of course, I always carried a little Bic mini lighter in there just in case. Actually, I think the mini Bic is still in my, yep, there she be, is in my pocket. I always carried it up front just so I could have access to it for whatever reason. Alright, so next in the bag is, because I've taken half the stuff out, this here is the original sleeping bag I started with. So my Western Mountaineering 10-degree mummy bag, which was wonderful. It kept me so warm. I loved this thing. But I got rid of it just as we hit the whites because it was starting to really, really heat up. And then I tried to get it back when we were hitting the Smokies, but my friend who sent it mailed it to me. It was supposed to come to Rowan Mountain in Tennessee. We got Jeff's sleeping bag back, his winter box, but my winter box decided to take a tour of Georgia and never made it to me. So sadly, I did not get my quilt back for the Smokies. Thankfully, though, the temperature wasn't too bad, so I didn't need it. But I would have really liked it because it's super warm and it's so cozy. But so I don't regret having it, but it definitely, probably at the end of the day, I didn't need it. If I had just had a 20-degree bag, quilt, I would have been fine, I think, at the end of the day. And if I had needed extra heat, I would have just used a sleep liner. In retrospect, that's what I would have liked to have done, but I had this one, cost me a bit of money. This is an investment bag, but in Canada, when you go camping, you need something really warm. So this will still serve me well. It's just, if you're looking to save money on the AT, just get yourself a 10-degree or a 20-degree bag with a liner. And if you're going towboat, and that'll be enough. And I'm a cold sleeper, so. I have also in my bag here my pillow. I have the Sea to Summit Eros pillow. So awesome. Loved this thing. It's a pillow. This is the pump sack for my sleeping pad, which I did use because I don't blow them up with my breath. I don't want to get moisture inside the sleeping pads because mold can grow in there, and I just, at the end of the day, don't want to blow up my sleeping pad. Oh, there's some blood on there, probably from mosquito bites. Alright, so this is the women's Thermarest Neo Air X-Lite. It is the petite size, so it's just long enough for me. There's no extra length at the foot end. This is not the one I started with. I got this again in the whites when I was looking to shed some weight because I started off, even though my gear was light, once I had all the food and everything in, I was like 25, 27 pounds. And that was heavy for me. I didn't much care for that. I ended my trip with essentially an 18 to 22 pound bag, which was way better. But so I did get this, and it was comfortable, as comfortable as my other one. I started off with this one, and in the end of the day, if I wasn't shedding weight, I would have just kept this. They were both equally as warm. This one is slightly more comfortable because it's not a mummy shape. It's also petite, so it fit me, and it had the baffling on each side to kind of scoop you in the middle. So this is a more comfortable, slightly more comfortable sleeping bag or pad. It was the Big Agnes Rapide SL. Again, it worked really well. This one I actually brought a little flexi pump with because the stuff sack for blowing, or the blow up sack for this, is really heavy. And the little flex tail pump weighed the same as the bag, so of course I'm going to bring the pump. It made more sense to me. So, did I need both of these? No. If I were going to start, I would probably, go with whatever's comfortable. A lot of people I found, because I never sleep all that great camping, to be honest, I don't think a lot of people do. You toss, you turn, people snore and fart, and you have to get up to go to the bathroom, and it's bright, and there's bugs, and nobody sleeps great. Well, maybe some people do. I don't. A lot of people ended up getting extra wide sleeping bags, and they slept a lot more comfortable. Jeff ended up getting the Nemo Tensor, wide and long because he's tall, and he loved it. It was way more comfortable. I did not, however, have, when we did sleep in shelters, Tyvek or something to put under my sleeping pad. I used my little small mat, which took a beating, I might add. I did use my Gossamer Gear 1/8 of an inch pad. This thing, there's not much life left into it. It's pretty much toast. But, you know, it served me well. I used it for a lot of purposes, like under my mat. I think a Tyvek sheet would have worked better, just to protect it from dirt, and yourself from dirt, because you spill over onto the shelter floor, and they're not that clean. I mean, you can sweep them, pardon me, as best you can, but they're still dirty. So throw a drop sheet of some kind that you would use for your tent under your sleeping pad if you're going to use the shelters. And a lot of people liked using the shelters. We weren't keen on the shelters, again, because people snore, they fart, the bugs. We liked our own space a lot more, but if it's raining, chances are likely you're going to want the shelters if you can get to the shelters. Now, going Sobo, it was pretty good, except when the bubbles meet. When the bubbles meet, not so good. It's a little packed. So, those are those. I carried everything. Oh, there's a few more things in here. We'll go over. I carried everything in a Nylaflume bag, which this bag has been with me for a couple of years now. So, and it's still holding up. I've got a few pieces of tape on it from where it's ripped, but it kept everything dry. I didn't carry a pack cover. I used this instead. The Dyneema is not waterproof. It doesn't soak up water, so it doesn't get heavy, but it's not waterproof. I really did contemplate the pack cover, not for the waterproofness to keep everything dry inside. That was taken care of. But when you want to take your pack in to your tent, this outside, it's going to get wet. So it's just going to get wet. So if you had a pack cover and you brought it in, at least your bag would still be dry. So there is some benefit to having a pack cover. Again, I didn't carry one. Jeff did. I kind of envied it a little bit, but I didn't end up buying it because I didn't want one. So, you know, you can decide that. I also carried this little tiny, it looks so sad right now, the Swiss cloths that I cut up. I would use this to dry things because it sucks up moisture and so much better than anything else. And then you can wring it out, you can throw it in the washer, you can use it to wash yourself, your body, your dishes, your bag, the tent, everything. It was a wonderful little piece of gear which should probably just go in the garbage now. Okay, so that's the bag. And of course, last but not least, attached to the bag is my Garmin InReach Mini. I did have a subscription to this. I never had to use it, thankfully. It was mostly for SOS because I wasn't emailing anyone. I would just text people when I got service, and since Jeff was with me, I didn't need it, but I'm happy to have it. It was worth it. And I also carried a tiny little compass on my bag just to know which direction I was going at all times, because as you may also notice, I got lost a lot. Okay. Also, on my, I'll just grab these since they're sitting there. These are my poles, my Lucky Micro Vario Carbon. Yeah. I have had these for a while, and I love these poles. They are super great. What I really like about them is they come apart so easy. Of course, I'm gonna, although I think I've not had them apart for so long, they've probably, anyway, they do come apart super easy. And they, oh, okay, well maybe not that easy, but normally they come apart super easy, and you can fold them up really, really small. But I kept them, I never closed them up, so they've been stuck in that position for quite some time, and they're probably pretty gritty at this point. And then they just snap open like that, and lock, and you're done. Beautiful set of poles. Highly recommend it. It's a woman's version. They don't have cork handles, They have this sort of non-sweating rubber thing. It did get a little sweaty and a little wet, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was fine. Okay, next is my rain gear. I started off with what I thought would be a Frog Tog poncho. It would be great. And I think if you were in the middle of summer and it was raining, a poncho would have been great. But since we started off in winter, and I didn't realize it even though it was June, I ended up buying a Frog Tog suit for my first attempt at Katahdin. The Frog Tog's pants suck. The crotch rips instantly as soon as you squat down. A lot of people would use duct tape to tape up the crotch, and that would work for a little bit. But of course I was in the 100-mile wilderness and could not do that. So I just had no crotch on my pants. And they were horrible, and they catch, and it was not a good thing. So when I hit Shaw's, I ended up getting a replacement. These are the Light-Hearted Gear rain pants. These were wonderful. They are what Frog Togs wish they could be. They are definitely a lot more durable. I did get a tiny little snag in them somewhere in the whites, just because you're climbing through sharp rocks and trees. But these were great. I mean, you're still wearing a plastic bag. You're still going to sweat buckets in them. But to keep out the cold and the rain and keep dry from the outside elements, these are perfect. Like I said, though, you will sweat inside, so you also get wet inside. So staying dry, not so good. Okay. My next piece of rain gear were these little gloves. I started off with these. They are a Mountain Equipment Co-op, which is Canada's version of REI. They're not meant to be waterproof, but they're almost waterproof. And they worked well while I had them, but I sent them back for the whites and never got them back, which I am very saddened about because I really, really wanted these near the end of the hike. But they were in the same box with my sleeping bag that never showed up. So I ended up having to just buy a pair from Walmart, these big winter gloves, which I have now used here while collecting firewood and whatnot. And so I've already destroyed them because they're crap. But they kept my hands warm for the hike, so they were great. But they were like super heavy, so you would never have bought these for a hike like this. They were just kind of an emergency solution, and that was it. Rain gear, I kept my Frog Togs coat for a while, but it eventually just got ridiculous. And in Woodstock, New Hampshire, I believe, I ended up picking up this Marmot. I don't even know what kind. Anyway, it's a raincoat with pit zips. If you're going to get a raincoat and you want to control it, you have to have pit zips. So this raincoat, loved this raincoat. This raincoat kept me warm. It kept me dry. It did help climate control. You still, again, you will sweat in it a bit. But when it gets cooler and you can control your temperature a little better, this was great. So I highly recommend this one. Like I said, I don't know. It's a Marmot something. But it's a good coat. Now, I started off with my Mountain Hardwear puffy, and I have mixed feelings about this. The reason I have mixed feelings about this is because I never had to use it. I might have had to use it at the very end, but I had sent it away with my sleeping bag, so it never came back to me. But in the beginning, even after a long day of hiking, I ended up just wearing my fleece, because I have a little fleece pullover, which I'll bring up in a second, because apparently I don't have it standing here. It's probably over there. But I ended up putting that on, and that was, and then I have a thin a windbreaker, and those actually were better. I kept being reluctant to use this because it's down, and it was so wet. You may recall we had the first 2 months were pretty much rain, so I really just didn't want to get it wet, and there were a few times I did try to wear it, and the sleeves would start to get wet, and then then it loses its purpose. So at the end of the day, would I bring a puffy? Honestly, no. Maybe on another hike, but the Appalachian Trail, I don't think needs a puffy. I think you just need a good solid second layer fleece. And now I know people say, oh, well, you need it for nighttime. But I never hiked really in my fleece because you warm up so fast that if I had to hike in something, it wouldn't be my fleece. It would probably just be my rain layer. And that would warm me up. So I honestly, I don't know, I may get some flack for that. But I wouldn't take a puffy. At the end of the day, I didn't need the puffy. What I bought instead was the Patagonia Houdini, which is a windbreak layer. And this actually served me way better because this was great for misting rain because it kept me dry. It didn't make me sweat buckets, and it kept me so warm with just my shirt, like my long sleeve shirt, and this. For pretty much any time I felt slightly cool, this is what I would wear. And this worked just fine. And if it got a lot colder, well, then the raincoat would come on. So, and if at night I was feeling cool and I hadn't worn this, I would just put on my, and it was windy because it's the wind that makes you cold, put on my fleece on top of my thermal and wear this, and this would be fine. So this and this, they probably, I think this is just slightly less weight than this, but if I had to choose, I would take this over this. But that's just me. Okay, so let's get rid of that. As well, with my clothing, I had the best pair of gear that I could have. If you have cold feet, and I have cold feet, and I have Raincoats, which makes them extra cold, are my down booties. I don't wear socks in these because if you wear socks, it kind of defeats the purpose. But this kept my feet so warm. And I'm a person who has cold feet. I wear like wool socks in summer. These things, worth their weight in gold. Highly recommend them. Right, for the rest of my clothing gear, I ended up with, and I kept these the entire time. These were my Capilene thermals. So they were warm enough and light enough. I didn't necessarily sleep in them in the summertime, but that's because we'd had the van at that point. So I did have some extra clothes and I would just grab a pair of cotton shorts. But these stayed in my backpack because, like I said, I always carried all my gear. As you just never know what's going to happen. So I did end up carrying these the whole time. They were great. Duly note though, they are see-through. So you're walking around with these on and your underwear, you're going to see everything. But I didn't care, and no one honestly else cares. And if they got a show, well then yippee. Whatever. I also had my little, I don't know, sports bra here. And this is a Patagonia. The reason I got this one is because it was quick drying and it didn't have a lot of material on the back because you sweat a lot in the back, and then that's where the part that it just stays wet. Although it was never quick drying as I wanted it to be. To be honest, this was always the one piece of gear that stayed wet a lot because you wear it all the time and you sweat a lot, and it's the first thing to absorb sweat. Not a huge fan. I ended up picking this shirt up. This was my sleeping shirt from the Whites On. So the big height of the summer, really. We ended up in North Conway when we went back to Canada the first time, or not back to Canada, when we went back up to Katahdin to finish Katahdin because we couldn't do it the first time. We stopped in North Conway because that's where we could rent a car, and they had an REI there. So that was my first time at an REI. So I bought this shirt to sleep in. It's just a Capilene, Capilene cool shirt, just so I could sleep in and have another shirt. I also got a pair of shorts because I started in a pair of shorts. They were the Patagonia Barely Baggies, the sort of pinkish ones I was wearing. They got too big. They kept falling off. Clearly I did lose some weight. So I ended up getting this Copaxi pair running shorts, which I really liked because unlike the fairly baggy ones, they kind of, there's no give in the leg. And as I said, the shorter the shorts, the faster the miles. So these had a bit more give. These are a running short, I think. And I found, and they have pockets, which is, you know, absolutely necessary. And I found out later through one of my subscribers, and I don't know if this is true, I'm going to believe them, that orange is a color that attracts wasps. So duly noted. But it was also because you can hunt, so that's why I kind of got them in orange. So, you know, gun, wasp, you choose your poison there. So when wasp season came, now I carried those the whole time because they're lightweight. When wasp season came, which was pretty much mid-September, it wasn't really getting cold. I would have preferred to wear shorts, but I was getting like seriously freaked out but getting bit, and everyone else around me getting bit so often. I got pants. I'd gotten rid of my first pair of pants way back in Rangeley. They were just a cheap pair I got from Winners, and they were great. I actually wish I had kept them, but I was not packing an extra pair of pants, and they only cost me like 20 bucks. So I ended up getting another pair of cool pants. Yeah. And they worked out really well. They were comfortable, lots of pockets, stretchy, very fast drying, which I really liked because I got wet a lot. So these were a good pair of pants. They wore really well because I didn't do a lot of butt sliding in these, but you know, I sat down a lot and had, you know, my gear and pack rubbing up against me, so they were pretty comfortable. I'm very happy, and they have, what I liked about them is they have this little drawstring at the ankles because I'm short and a lot of pants drag, which means they get caught in my shoes. So this helped keep the pants close to my ankles, which also helped with ticks, which I never had a problem with, I might add. I found 2 ticks on me, and they both had never attached, and I squished them. So maybe it was just, as a Sobo, you don't get a lot of ticks. I don't know, or maybe it was extra rainy. Ticks weren't an issue for me. I know a lot of Nobos said they had a lot of issues with ticks, so I didn't have that problem. And I ended up wearing my Capilene Patagonia hoodie, sun hoodie, as you all saw. This stayed with me. I picked this up again in Conway there. I had a cool one earlier, the company cool, with a zipper, but it did not function well. It was a sun shirt as well, but it was pilling and wearing really badly from the backpack, so I ended up ditching that before it ripped holes in it with that and sent that one out. It's a good shirt, just it was not meant for backpacking. It's a sun shirt. It should be sitting on a beach or doing something else. The other piece of gears that I have, I got some Dirty Girl gaiters, which I didn't start with, but I ended up picking up at Shaw's because I was tired of pine needles getting into my socks and stabbing me mid-hike and then having to fish them out. So I got those. Darn Tough socks, my go-to, because who doesn't love a pair of darn tough socks? I did start off with the taller mid-calf, and I ended up choosing the anklets at the end just because it was hot. But then I switched back to the mid-calf when it got cooler. And my little, what do we got here? My little sit pad. This is, I don't know, some $2 thing I got off of Garage Grown Gear. Sit pad. It's no name brand, but honestly, this is all I needed, and I'm so happy I had it so often because this was a great little piece of gear. Now, the other piece of gear that I don't have here, let me grab it because I forgot totally. This is the famed hat that I wore the entire trip. And I did wash it a few times, which I don't think you're supposed to do because it's starting to split up the seam. But this is a ponytail hat, if you were wondering, from Lululemon. It's one of their running hats. I had it, so that's why I brought it, because I said I needed a hat for my glasses. This is the fleece coat that I had. It is an Arc'teryx something, I don't know. Very, very thin, very lightweight coat. Certainly not a cheap coat, but it worked really well for me as a layering coat, and it's quite lightweight with a hood on it, so that worked for me. I had a smart wool beanie, which I would wear at night if it were cold. I didn't really wear it that often because I found it kept popping off my head, but I did have it if I needed it. I just didn't really need it very often. And I had 2 pairs of ex officio, well, 1 pair of smart wool underwear and 1 pair of ex officio underwear. The boxer shorts. This is what I would wear in the summertime when it got hot for sleeping in, because, and if you're wondering for women how to get these ex officio boxer shorts, they're not women's, they're men's. But Jeff had bought a pair for himself, and they sent him the wrong size, and he hates sending stuff back, so he just asked if they fit me, and they did. So I'm a small girl, but a medium worked fine. They were very comfy. And then just a pair of smart wool bikini shorts, because I do like the merino wool underwear. They don't dry as quickly, but at the same time they help with odor. They do dry because they're on your body. Your body heat will warm them up. And I did find, because I also have the ex officio bikini ones as well, that those can ride up a bit, and the merino wool ones didn't ride up as much. But to be honest, all underwear seem to ride up. So if you can find that pair, except for this pair, that don't ride up your crack when you're hiking, that would be really good to know for other people. So that is pretty much my gear. Now, I kept all my documents and that kind of stuff really just in a plastic bag and wrapped it up in my bottom of my backpack, where all my waterproof gear was. I almost forgot. Now, I showed you what I didn't end up with taking from my sleeping bag, but I didn't tell you what I ended up with. And this thing was great. I ended up, you can see I put my little micro towel in the little bottom end with the Enlightened Equipment 30-degree bag. I think this is the Flex, because it's got the zipper here, quilt. And this was a game changer. This was really good. One, it was about 6 ounces, no, it was more than 6 ounces. It's about like 8 ounces lighter than this. So it was super light. It definitely kept me warm enough. This is what I ended up using pretty much, well, I did use from the whites to the end. Even when I wasn't sleeping outside in a tent anymore. And we did keep our tent. We had the Z-Pack Triplex tent. We did keep that tent the whole way through. It worked fine. I didn't pack it, that's why I'm not showing it here, but we did have it. Jeff packed it because he always packed the tent. I never packed it. And but we used my poles. So we kept that. And yeah, so essentially from the whites to the very end, I used the sleeping bag. This was perfectly fine in the Smokies. Even when the temperature started to get a little cool, this was fine. I did not need anything else. That's why I say, like, if you're an extra cold sleeper, like a 20-degree bag probably would have made me feel more comfortable, as this was only a 30-degree bag, just for those cooler nights. And if you're, like, it took us 5 months, so we were in a pretty good seasonal range. It shouldn't have gotten too cold in the beginning, although it kind of did. And, you know, in the end, it started to get a little cold here and there, but it wasn't too bad because we were further south. So, you know, our temperature-wise range, other than a few short moments, weren't too bad. And again, you could have easily bolstered this with a sleeping liner. If I had pre-ordered this, I would have gotten the one with the fixed foot box, but I didn't. I got it at Shaw's, and this is what they had, so this is what I bought. So this was great. I loved this thing. It definitely is worth all the praise that most people give it. And I did use the straps on my pad But when we were sleeping in the van as well, this is what I slept with. So this kept me super warm, and highly recommend it. So that is that. And just to be on the thorough side, I did forget 2 items. One was my camp shoes. These were most helpful after the 100-mile, because we started off with the water shoes, and they worked for a little bit, but they were not great because they were too big for me and they fell off, and they were just cheap. So we ended up getting the Zero shoes, which were great for in town, and the ability to dry off your feet, or dry out your feet, because with the amount of water we had in the beginning, there was a high likelihood of getting trench foot or athlete's foot or some sort of fungal infection, and you had to dry out your feet. It was really important, and that's why I had no issues with my feet, short of just being sore, which, you know, you're walking, you're going to be sore. So these worked really well for me. They were pretty lightweight, and I wore these in town. It was really nice to have a pair of dry shoes to wear in towns when your main hiking shoes were always wet and you just couldn't stand being in them anymore, and they were easy to slip on at night when I had to go pee. So that's that. And the second item I forgot was my nightlight. This obviously came with me the whole time, and my power pack as well. The Anchor. I had started off with a 20,000 milliamp, which honestly was kind of overkill. Maybe if you do like watch Netflix at night or play on your phone a lot, you might have needed that, but I really didn't. A 10,000 amp would have done just fine for me. So I had those, and I had an SD card reader for the phone, so I could take off the videos and save it on that, because obviously, you know, I didn't have a cloud storage or anything that. So those were important. I kept everything just in those little gray Dyneema bags. I keep forgetting stuff all the time. In these little gray Dyneema bags. So that was really handy. And that's kept it, and then again, I kept them in the Nyla Flume. So that kept everything nice and dry for me. I filmed everything just on my iPhone. So obviously that was what came with me. And I had the Far Out app, which was super duper important, especially that GPS aspect, because as mentioned, I got lost a lot. So those are, I think, everything. Like I said, I ended up with pretty much the same first aid kit I left with. Everything in it. Obviously I didn't need everything in it. The most important things in there was the KT tape, the ibuprofen, the Tylenol, the Benadryl. What else? I used a few Band-Aids when I would scrape a fingernail or something, but I didn't really use that. The chlorhexidine wipes were really good to clean any scrapes and whatnot. And we used some tenacious tape to patch up some things, like my rain pants had a little hole in them, so that's what I used for that. We didn't really need it for any other gear, because nothing really got holes in it that we needed to patch, other than, you know, the frog togs, which we didn't patch. We just ditched and got better gear. So, you know, if that's all you can afford, go for it. But if you can get some better rain gear, save yourself some time and garbage. Hopefully I covered everything. I think I did. Again, I hope you found this useful, and if you have any comments, chuck them down below and I will get back to you about that. I will also be putting out another video, just kind of other stuff. There was a bunch of questions people had, so I will address those as well. But thank you for watching. Do give this a like and subscribe, and I will catch you on my next video. Thanks for watching.